Hey, welcome back, everybody. Great to see you. Happy Monday and happy Veterans Day to everybody, especially those of you who happen to have served in any of the armed forces. We really do appreciate you. And if you know somebody that has, then definitely go out of your way today and thank them for everything that they have done for us. Really a underappreciated group. And, it's unfortunate that there's only one day of the year that you folks really get recognized like this, but still, it is very important that we thank all of you. So, again, we appreciate that. Now, as for the weather, a very active kind of pattern coming up, I think, for a lot of folks. Now, right now, some of you might be thinking, well, not a whole lot's happening, but I really do think once we get, 7, 10, 15 days down the road, I think we're going to have some pretty long videos, to say the least, with what is shaping up to potentially be a 1-2 punch between the tropics and the north. We could have big time cold air outbreak combined with potential hurricane developing in the Caribbean. And obviously, folks, when you get those two at the same time, that spells trouble for really just about everyone in the country is going to see some sort of impact. So we're going to break all that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Also, hit that bell for the latest notifications. It's free, so again, you don't have to worry about paying for anything. That's the lovely part about YouTube. Then leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. We had an amazing video yesterday, so I do appreciate everyone who tuned in for that one. And again, I think it's going to be an active stretch ahead. So being subscribed is obviously the best way to stay up to date. And yeah, I guess I said like the video, I said comment, I said all the things. Consider sharing. That's another one you can do for sure. And all that helps this video reach more people and helps the channel grow. So you are all very much appreciated for that. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and dive into things, folks, because again, it's going to be an active stretch. Now, I'll give you a quick game plan for the video, I guess, before we truly dive in. But we're going to start by taking a look at satellite imagery like we normally do. And then we are going to first talk about the tropics, where we've had a pretty big uptick in potential activity from the overnight models. Then after that, we're going to do a segment I call Meteorology in Minutes, which I just came up with yesterday. I decided that's what I'll call it. Then we'll talk about the near term, and then we'll get into that long range pattern where I think snowfall chances could really increase here on the horizon. All right, now let's actually really dive into things. So current satellite loop over the lower 48 and the western Atlantic here, specifically the Caribbean and Gulf. Right now, things remain quieter than it looked yesterday. This is our occluded low pressure now swinging up through portions of Ontario and Quebec. In fact, yesterday we had a couple tornado warnings that I think surprised a lot of people, including myself, through portions of Michigan and then into eastern Canada. Had kind of a cold core setup, as we call it in meteorology. And I think even a couple of weak tornadoes did touch down. So definitely an active day yesterday, but you'll notice most of the cloud field associated with that is now moving offshore, which is making way for our next storm system that you folks in the Pacific Northwest are absolutely feeling here on this Monday. You'll notice all those bright returns here indicating those cold, very tall cloud tops here working through the region. And this will be the start of our next storm system that could bring some snow and ice to portions of Canada and the United States. So we'll break that down for sure. Now, other than that, the big story is going to be the tropics. And you'll notice right now, not a lot happening down here, but I want you to pay attention right into here where we do have some thunderstorm activity. And that is going to lead to the potential for, once again, more development. And I'll be the first to tell you, I kind of thought the last storm, I thought Milton was going to be the end of it. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite look like it, as we could get our S-name storm, which I believe is Sarah, if I am not mistaken, out of this new area that is running a 40% chance of development in the next 7 days. And again, yesterday's video, we had nothing here. Today, a 40% shot of development. A pretty big uptick in some of the model guidance. And we'll kind of have to talk about why here. So you're probably wondering, Gerald, it is the 11th of November. What are we doing? Why are we still talking about hurricanes? And honestly, I wish we were done as well. Trust me, I'd much rather just discuss winter weather. But unfortunately, the tropics wait for nobody. And down here in the Caribbean, we still have very warm sea surface temperatures. You'll notice up and around 30 degrees Celsius here. That's in the mid to upper 80s for Fahrenheit. And again, you only need about 26 degrees Celsius or about 76 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit sea surface temperatures to produce a hurricane. And this is obviously well warmer than that. So that is one problem we're running into. Another problem that we're running into is we've got pretty favorable conditions over the Caribbean for development. Now, obviously, I talked about the warm oceans. Another thing is we have a big abundance currently of precipitable water and a very humid atmosphere. I didn't pull that map up, but just trust me, it's there. Another thing we're dealing with is a very favorable upper level wind pattern over the next week or so. You'll notice here, the colors in the Caribbean, or really the lack thereof, indicates to me that we have very weak wind shear. And more importantly, look at the way that these streamlines are moving. Streamlines just means these long lines you see with the arrows at the tail of them. Notice how they're all separating from each other. We have an upper level cyclone here in the Caribbean, and that fans the air out. And what that helps to do is create lift at the surface. And that lift obviously produces showers and thunderstorms. It lowers the pressure. So kind of what starts a hurricane here is often this setup, warm sea surface temperatures, upper level divergence, and you get something to form down here. And then that positive feedback loop between the latent heat release and the condensation in a hurricane really helps to strengthen it. So this upper level favorable wind pattern remains here for a while. I mean, this is getting all the way a week from now, even further out than that. And look at how favorable it stays down here for potential development. So whatever potential storm system there would be has plenty of time to try to get its act together. And that's exactly what some of our models are now projecting. Now, we did talk about this a little bit yesterday, so this isn't completely out of the blue. But we did see a pretty significant uptick overnight in the models, including our ensemble members. These are the GFS ensemble members here. And you'll notice this is now through the next 10 days. Many of them develop something down here deep into the Caribbean, and many of these members do pull this northward, kind of towards the towards the Gulf of Mexico and generally towards the state of Florida. Now, the GFS has generally been the more hyperactive one this season. So what about the European? And this is where things get a little bit crazy, folks. Again, these are the GFS ensembles. These are the European ensembles. This is even more kind of on board than the GFS, which tells me as a forecaster that this is, this has got some legs. And that's why the National Hurricane Center has already pulled that 40% chance of development. And another thing that we need to watch is the track of this thing. Now, obviously, you folks in Central America will need to watch this. You folks in Jamaica and Cuba, but maybe even the state of Florida. Look at some of these members over the next 10 days, pull this north and kind of hook it towards the state of Florida. And a lot of them get this well into hurricane strength. In fact, some of these are major hurricanes. And we just broke records a week ago with a major hurricane during the month of November. There's a chance that we do it again in another week as we get kind of closer towards the middle and the second half of the month. So, I mean, really crazy stuff, folks. Honestly, not what you would expect to see this time of year, but I'll tell you, if there's any year that's going to do some weird weather shenanigans, sure enough, it would be 2024, given the kind of way that this year has already gone. All right, so let's take a look at some operational models. I'm only going to show you two. Again, I don't want to beat the tropics to death here, but this is important. So we'll start with the GFS. Starts to form this storm as early as this week. This is Thursday afternoon. You'll notice this area of low pressure getting its act together near Central America here, not far from Honduras, and then kind of latches onto those warm sea surface temperatures, latches onto that very favorable environment, and strengthens this quickly into a tropical storm and hurricane as it kind of dances around the Central American coastline here. And by the time we get about a week from now, the storm is still where it started. So really the GFS from this Thursday all the way to next Monday keeps this storm in and around Central America as a pretty feisty tropical storm, even getting near hurricane status, but then pulls it northward here, gets it into the Gulf, strengthens it into a major hurricane, and right at the 10-day mark from now has a hurricane landfalling into the state of Florida. Now, is that guaranteed to happen? Absolutely not. However, I'll show you the European, and you may notice some similarities. So same thing, later this work week as tropical storm forms here, gets its act together, kind of just, stays down in the Caribbean through the weekend into early next week. A real lack of steering currents, so the storm kind of just bounces around a little bit. But as we get about a week from now, we get some steering currents that finally pull it northward. The European as well develops this into a major hurricane into the Caribbean about 8 days from now, pulls it into the Gulf, and just like the GFS has a landfalling system in this time the Florida Keys compared to kind of more towards Fort Myers with the GFS. But still, both models in 10 days show a hurricane landfalling in the United States on November 20th. So I really don't know what else to say with that one, folks. We're going to watch it, or we'll have to watch it. Again, a very big uptick in the models here. And this is one of the first times this year that we've seen the European and the GFS both latch on to something like this in the long run. So it's I don't think this is just a GFS feedback problem with Caribbean systems. I think that this one This one's got some legs, and it looks like the National Hurricane Center agrees too, if they're already putting a 40% chance of development up. So crazy times, I tell you. In the tropics and in the mid-latitudes, as these mid-latitude cyclones and potential cold air outbreak kind of time up at the same time as this tropical system, which, not to get into fantasy land, but should those two really combine and phase together, that would be quite the setup. But we won't look at that. We won't think about the crazy scenarios right now, unless some of the models start showing them. Then maybe we will. But yeah, so that's your tropics update. Let's talk about this new segment I've started, Meteorology in Minutes. I think it's kind of a fun name, and I came up with it all on my own. So, give myself a little pat on the back for that. If you're new, though, and again, I really just started this yesterday, this is a little segment where I kind of break down the current conditions in the upper levels and the surface and kind of try to teach you a little bit here of some synoptic meteorology, which I'm going to go off on another tangent, but I did get the highest grade on my synoptic exam in my class, which I took last week. So, feeling pretty good about that and feeling qualified enough to teach you a little bit. All right, so let's start talking, or else this is going to be meteorology in hours instead of minutes. So right now at the upper levels, this is our 500 millibar wind map. This just shows the winds, again, well above the surface. And you'll notice for most of us, most of these wind barbs are generally what we call zonal. That means that they're not tilting a lot. It's pretty straight across the country. That means you could start in one part of the West Coast and end up basically in the exact same part of the East Coast without deviating much. Now, there is one little upper level, or kind of two upper level pieces of energy we're watching. We have one trough here. Let me pick a different color so you can see it a little bit better. One trough here and a jet streak embedded in that trough. And then we have another trough out west and another jet streak out here on the Pacific side as well. So these are the two main players right now. And what this tells me, anytime you see a jet streak, generally that states that we have a pretty sharp temperature gradient. So on the southern side of that jet streak, you're going to see pretty warm temperatures. And on the northern side, you're going to see pretty cold temperatures. And if I go ahead and switch this to the surface map, notice that's exactly what we're having. We're having warm, humid air through portions of the southern Midwest. And to the north, we have a storm system that's actually producing a little bit of snow into portions of northern the UP of Michigan and into portions of southern Canada. So again, this is one of my favorite parts of this segment, is that you can circle something on the upper levels and sure enough, it pops up that exact same way at the surface. Always fun when that happens. And another thing I'll show you about these jet streaks really quickly is you can kind of divide these up into four regions. These two regions I'm going to show you right here generally produce lift in the atmosphere. And if I move this over to the other map, you'll notice, again, on this side right here, we do have a lot of rain, and that's due partially to that lift. So that's kind of your Meteorology in Minutes segment of the day. A little bit of fun, what's happening out there and why is it happening. But now let's kind of move to, more of, what's happening on the ground and what's on the way for the near term, and then we'll talk about that long-term forecast. So right now, a lot of rain falling again up into portions of New Brunswick, up into kind of portions of Maine and into New England. Most of this falling is rain in the United States. Some of this is going to be snow up into Canada. Same story for this other storm system. Kind of over towards the Midwest of the United States. Again, going to be some snow on the Canadian side, mainly rain on the U.S. side. But if you happen to be watching in the UP of Michigan, let me know. You might be seeing just a little bit of snow mixing in there. So would love to hear your reports. Also up here into the UP and into Wisconsin, high wind due to the storm system here that has flared up. So again, we do have wind advisories for those regions today. So definitely watching out for that. Then seeing showers all the way down into the Carolinas and Georgia. Again, there is a front associated with this entire storm system that it is kind of scooping all the way down here. So pretty rainy kind of morning for many of us, but we will be clearing out throughout the afternoon. So again, expect better conditions. And then same story out west, a big storm system bringing plenty of mountain snow and valley and coastal rain as that one works on through. All right, let's time this out in the east first, and then we'll get out west again. Brand new model run, so I'm going to kind of quickly load this ahead into time. And let's start talking about it. So this afternoon, again, a couple showers continue to work on through. We're going to get kind of a second bump up of shower activity and a second pocket of cold air. Again, I showed you that jet streak. I showed you that cold air on the north side, that warm air on the south side. Well, that cold air is going to move south eventually. And here is our front with it. And you'll notice firing up some precipitation that could be convective in nature, so maybe some graupel falling with this, maybe a little bit of hail through portions of the northeast this afternoon. But other than that, really just some showers left along the Gulf Coast here through Florida, southern Alabama, southern Georgia. In fact, maybe some training of thunderstorms down that way. Again, if you look down there, you'll see that kind of steady flow of tropical moisture. We'll need to watch for that. And we could even get a little bit of lake-enhanced precipitation today out of this front. We've yet to see much lake effect precipitation at all this year. But again, we'll talk about that later on here in the long run. I think that could change. Yeah, that's much of today. Tonight, again, clearing out mostly. That high pressure moves in. Here it is. Cold air damming sets up shop. That's going to cool things down pretty significantly tomorrow afternoon and evening. So again, this is tomorrow morning, clearing out, that high pressure moving in throughout your Tuesday afternoon. And then that sets up shop by Wednesday for a return of more kind of active weather out through the plains and through portions of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. And that'll be the start of our next storm system that we need to discuss as some of that Pacific energy kind of moves eastbound. All right, speaking of the Pacific, again, a pretty rainy and snowy afternoon for many folks. And again, I'm going to quickly load this all the way ahead into time just so it's up to date. So this afternoon, again, I'm going to kind of move this ahead. Mountain snow, valley and coastal rain could be squally at times. So heavy precipitation rates, whether that be frozen or liquid, obviously depending on your elevation. But notice this kind of gets broken up into two separate pieces of energy. We've got one over the Rockies and then more back over the PNW. This rocky piece of energy is going to create enough of some lift in a baroclinic zone that we're likely going to get some low pressure to form here over portions of the northern plains through the middle of the week here. You'll notice this is Tuesday. See that low pressure forming and moving into the plains and then picking up that precipitation. All while that's happening, another big burst of precipitation back into the Pacific Northwest. This is Tuesday afternoon. Notice a lot of rain and heavy mountain snow move back into the forecast. And this gets us all the way into Wednesday morning. So it sets up shop for a pretty active week ahead. And let's talk about that active week ahead and kind of pick up where we left off on Wednesday morning here and kind of analyze what's happening. So Wednesday morning, I kind of here I'm seeing three separate storm systems that are worth noting, some of which are going to combine together to create the potential for a bit of a troublesome weekend forecast with maybe some snow and ice into the northeast and into eastern Canada. So that's what we'll talk about now. So here we go. This is this Wednesday. You'll notice one big trough of cold air over kind of just off the coast of Nova Scotia there. Another trough into the plains. That's the storm system I just showed you leaving the Rockies. And then another potent trough over the Pacific Ocean here just off the west coast. So this is a very meridional flow, as we call it, just meaning that we're not having those straight wind patterns that I was talking about earlier. This gets very bent and curvy by the middle of this week. And watch what happens with these two pieces of energy in the east. These kind of two storm systems east of the Rockies. What happens with those two is they end up merging together. So you get kind of this double barrel look. What I mean by that is you have one circle here, you have another circle here. It's kind of like eyes looking at you, or a double barrel kind of end of a shotgun. It's kind of where it gets its name there. And those two combine together. And what this could do this weekend, folks, is this could lead to pretty stormy weather. I say stormy, I mean kind of snowy, wintry weather over portions of the Northeast and Eastern Canada. I mentioned this for the first time a couple days ago, then I stopped talking about it a little bit. But now that we're closer in range, again, this is this Friday. That's a big pocket of cold air with a good amount of lift in the atmosphere, and we'll show you what that means. At the same time, though, here comes that next big storm system dipping out west, and eventually that's going to create its own problem coming on down the road. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Now, let's talk about these two storm systems combining together. So here we go. Wednesday and Thursday, you'll notice rain picking up through the east as that low pressure forms. Crosses into the apps by Thursday afternoon, and you'll notice even enough cold air left over for maybe some mountain snow or ice breaking out here into Pennsylvania and potentially New York State as well by Thursday. But then what happens is the two storms merge together, and look at this, Friday. We've got snow and ice breaking out through eastern Canada and portions of New England as that cold air and that precipitation overlap each other. And kind of hangs around for a while here as we get this cutoff low that brings rounds of snow and ice through the weekend. So we'll kind of zoom in here and show this a little bit better for you folks. And again, this goes for Canada and the Northeast, so both of you are in the frame here. Here we go. Storm systems begin to combine by Thursday and Friday, and you'll notice this slug of moisture. And this is the European. I showed you the GFS a second ago. This is a different model run. This is the European, but again, throws this moisture inland. We've got ice and even some snow breaking out here as this moves on through. So it's something we need to watch. And again, we'll talk about it more in depth as we get closer, but I am watching for that potential. And the European ensemble members do show a pretty good chance of ice accumulating in a big way through next weekend. And then potentially even lingering after that. Now, this is in millimeters, so I'll show the United States in a second in what would be inches. But again, some definitely icy concerns here through New Brunswick up into Labrador and much of the eastern maritime sections of Canada here would need to watch for that potential of some icing and even some snowfall. Now, this is including another storm system, kind of the one that's moving through now, plus the storm this coming weekend. But you'll notice definitely some snow showing up here, depending on where you're at. So again, we'll talk about that more in depth as we get closer into time. But the U.S. as well, look, we've got a pretty good mean of 1/10 of an inch of ice, even higher than that in some places here through Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and even into upstate New York through the coming weekend. And you'll even notice a little bit showing up down here in West Virginia. This is for the same storm system. So we'll need to watch it. Again, nothing to be overly concerned about right now, but I will keep you in the loop, and we will have to discuss the potential of maybe some wintry mischief as soon as this weekend, which then sets up shop for the real fun, which I think is going to come in about 10 days. All right, so I mentioned this in yesterday's video. I think the next 10 days are going to be a transitional period. And what I mean by that is we're going to slowly start to work in these mid-latitude cyclones that cross west to east across the entire country. And I think eventually, about 10 days from now, we're going to drop the hammer a little bit. What I mean by that is, again, you'll notice through the next couple of days, we get some of these blue areas to move on through. This is now through this next weekend. Again, here's that big storm over the northeast. You see that blue. Here comes another big storm out west, again, kind of amplifying this transitional period. But notice what happens here about 10 days from now. In fact, this is even more like 8 days from now on the GFS ensembles. We get this big blue dip. And you'll notice this is connected all the way up to the Arctic. So you're getting this troughing really all the way down here as all of this cool, or really cold, not even cool, cold Arctic air spills southward on the GFS. And eventually this crosses the entire country. By the time we get 10, 11, 12 days from now, we have a big trough over the eastern United States. So this would mean a cold and stormy pattern. And people always throw that around when they show these upper level temperatures, or upper level heights, I should say. But what exactly does that mean? Does that mean in all of this blue right here, we're going to see snowy weather? No. Generally, how this works is over the core of the blue, you have the coldest temperatures. And then on the right-hand side of that, you'll see where these kind of isobars, or these height values, I should say, kind of begin to curve upward. This is what we call divergence into this area. And generally in here is where you see storm systems form. So what happens often is they work together and you get a storm system to form here, and then that throws back precipitation into the blue, and then you would get a wintry kind of, mess. Now, is this exactly what's going to happen here? No. Again, it is November, so I still think snow chances, if I back this up some, are going to be favored mostly on the northern side of this. So again, kind of follow the northern edge of this blue, and then if I kind of go through here right into this circled area, you'll notice that's where I think the best overlapping of the cold air with that divergence kind of mixes together and could lead to increased chances for snowfall towards the middle of the month. And the GFS and its ensembles are not the only model showing this, the European as well. Here we go 10 days from now, a big dip out west, then crosses through the east and hangs around for a while. So what exactly could this look like? Again, I could talk about upper level maps all day, but what does this mean for you on the surface? Well, folks, I think it means, again, kind of what I've been saying, a stormy pattern and a wintry one at that. So here's the first storm this weekend. Again, you'll notice here's that snow and ice getting thrown back into the northeast. Again, we'll talk about that more in depth as we get closer in time. But that hangs around, causes some problems, and then here comes our bigger storm in that 7 to 10 day time frame. Again, that big trough dips down here. Here's the pocket of the cold air. Here's that divergence, and because of that divergence, we get a storm to form. So this is the latest GFS I'll add. Forms a storm down here near the Four Corners region, gets a lot of snow into the Rockies, and even a lot of snow into the northern plains here. Even less than 10 days from now. This is 7 to 10 days out. Again, big time snow breaking out through the northern plains, a strong storm system. And then eventually all of this cold air finally gets pulled eastbound. And you'll notice what happens here. See how all this kind of precipitation gets pulled up out of the Gulf and out from the Atlantic, in this, again, very far out time frame, but I'm just showing you generally what could happen here. Do not take this verbatim. This is often what happens in these setups. You get these big pockets of cold air, again, dumps out west, slowly moves east, and then it hits this baroclinic zone across the East Coast, and that can form strong storm systems that like to ride up the coast. So we'll see what happens. Again, nothing set in stone here, but the GFS has been pretty consistent on some shot of cold air into the lower 48 in the long run. Now, another thing I'll mention, where it dumps is important. Now, a day or two ago, a lot of the models dumped this right into here. Overnight, now they're more dumping it out west. So that'll play a big role in who gets the coldest temperatures. But as long as it crosses the entire country and it doesn't get blocked out west, which unfortunately has really been the theme for the past couple of winters, so don't rule that out as a possibility. But as long as that doesn't happen, we'll still see some sort of cold air outbreak or winter weather even east of the Mississippi, even if it is in the northern latitudes here through the Midwest and the higher terrains, maybe even up the east. All right, snowfall chances over the next 10 days. This is the chance of at least an inch of snow falling within a day. Obviously, in the near term, it's going to be the Pacific Northwest and the Rockies that get it. But this weekend, you'll notice here's that one storm system I mentioned showing some steam up into the Northeast. And then we get a little bit of a lull outside of the Rockies. But then again, about 7 to 10 days from now, a big uptick in winter weather chances through the northern plains. Again, this indicates to me this is where the cold air is. This is likely where the low pressure track would be. But you'll notice that shifts eastbound. And by the time we get 10 to 15 days from now, we have much higher snowfall chances in the normal lake effect areas, as well as even the apps from North Carolina northbound, indicating to me likely northwest flow events, heavy lake effect snow events, and potentially, cannot rule it out, even in the long run, maybe some sort of storm system tries to ride up the coast and bring snow even further outside of those areas. And you'll see that some of these snowfall chances in the Northeast, even outside of the higher terrains, albeit not very high chances. It's just a pattern we'll have to watch for potential snowy weather. I'll quickly show you the European model as well and its ensembles. Again, same story this weekend, quick uptick in the Northeast. It stays pretty high in the Rockies through the near term. And then again, 7 to 10 days from now, a big signal for snow into the plains. Check this out. I mean, this is about 10 days from now, heavy snow signals from Kansas all the way up into portions of Minnesota, indicating, again, the models are projecting a storm to form and eventually kind of cross the country and get higher snowfall chances into the lake effect regions, and again, maybe even some northwest flow snow. All right, final thing I'll show you are temperatures here in the long run. Again, warm today, but then we get that shot of cool air in the east that I talked about early on. That brings some cold air damming, cools things down for your Wednesday and even into your Thursday. But then after that, we kind of warm up again next week. This coming Sunday, very warm temperatures, moving back east of the Rockies, but you'll notice cold out west, and that cold slowly working eastbound. By the time we get about, again, 10, 11, 12 days from now, really everyone in the lower 48 is below average in the temperature department on the ensembles here, which indicates that we've got pretty good confidence in that happening. So again, just to summarize, what do we know? Well, we know we're going to get probably a big shot of cold air somewhere in the country. The big question is, where is that? And where do storms form due to that big troughing? And then obviously whatever's happening in the tropics is going to be its own concern we need to watch as well. So a very active stretch ahead, folks. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, do so, like the video, and consider sharing with somebody you think might enjoy it. Alrighty, with that said, have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Enjoy it. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.